If you're if you're kind of a specialist in AV, video recording, okay, great. And if you're more kind of generally in IT, great. And who else? Library? All right. Now, is there anyone who's not in any of those groups? Administration, wandering off the street to get ice cream? No? Okay. All right. Good. Well, that's a good mix. That'll make for, I think, a good kind of back and forth when we get to that point. How many of you are already doing any amount of video recording of student practice? Okay, so then how many of you are not, just so I can get a hands ratio here? Okay. All right, so some of you are. Those of you who are doing the video recording, how many of you are doing digital video recording? And so analog video recording? Okay, great. And both. You're still doing both. Okay, right. Great. So we'll be kind of covering from the very beginning of just recording a session to how MediaNotes will specifically work to help students annotate and review that session. And from there, I'd like to just have a conversation about what you see as the main benefits and then obstacles to making something like MediaNotes happen in your school. Hopefully you'll be using MediaNotes, but there might be other options out there. And so I think it's the broader conversation is what will it take to make this kind of deliberate practice in your school work. So I just wanted to start with kind of picking up where Larry left off, and starting with kind of the question that keeps coming up. MediaNotes is actually a piece of software. It's a great piece of software. Its main function is for annotation. I call it the red pen for videos. When you assign written work to your students, you have a red pen, or maybe nowadays you use Microsoft Word or whatever to kind of annotate the papers and give written feedback. And until MediaNotes has come along, there hasn't been an equivalent for video. So MediaNotes provides that ability to annotate and provide targeted feedback on video recorded practice sessions. What it doesn't do is actually record the video, and that's why I was just curious how many of you have your own existing video recording facilities, and how many of you are looking at creating one, how many of you have a budget to create one, how many of you don't. And I'm going to start from kind of the most difficult proposition, which is that you do not have any video recording, or at least any digital video recording facility, and you have zero budget to do it. Or let's say you have almost zero budget. So what would you do? And Larry started kind of introducing the possibility that your students are probably walking around with a very powerful video recording system already, known as a laptop, which we're all trying to ban from our classrooms. But this might be a very good reason to bring a laptop to the classroom. Now, nowadays, a lot of laptops are already coming with built-in webcams, and that kind of could make things a lot easier. Especially, I think the newest Macs, pretty much universally, except for the little tiny ones, are pretty much universally equipped with webcams. Increasingly, Windows laptops are also coming with webcams. Even if they're not, at this point right now, top-of-the-line webcams. This is pretty much the current top-of-the-line webcam. It's got a really awesome lens. Runs you about maximum $150 if you're getting ripped off. $100 if you're not. I mean, and you don't have to go for the top of the quality webcam, because really this is honestly overkill for what you're mostly trying to accomplish. I've got this thing perched incorrectly, because I have the whole screen pointed up. All right, there we go. So what does it take? You basically can just buy, let's say you have 20 students in your class, you pair them up, you just buy 10 or 20 webcams at $100 each, about the same price as it would cost you to buy a single HD video recorder. And I think those of you who were in the last session saw that Larry has an entire system where you kind of have a little styrofoam box and kind of distribute it in the beginning of class. Everybody gets a webcam, and then you collect those back at the end of the day. I'm just going to show you kind of a start to finish. Let's record a video right now, and then pop that into MediaNotes. Let's do some annotation on that video, and just to show you how easy it is to go and make this happen in your classroom. And so this is live, and if anything explodes, hopefully it won't. So one of the nice things about most webcams nowadays, if you're doing it on a Mac, it's already got the software built in. Those of you, and actually it's interesting how many people are with Macs now, even at this conference, when probably, what was it, like 3 years ago, it was almost all Windows, right? So, and we're seeing that more and more in the students as well. One of the things about the webcams is they come with the software, and if you lose the disk, you can always just go to the website and download it. This is Logitech. This is a Logitech camera, and it came with a CD, and you can also just go to the Logitech website, download the software, install it, run it. You're good to go. And the software now is pretty powerful and pretty easy to use. So here I am looking at this video. Am I getting feedback? Okay. And what I can just do is hit record, and here I am recording myself talking to all of you. And I guess I have to say some stuff so that we have actual video content to annotate here. Maybe I should just ask how many of you are relying on, any of you using webcams in your current situation? You guys? Anybody else? Okay. And the rest of you, those of you who said that you already have existing digital video capacity, do you have is it staffed? Do you have people who go with the cameras into the rooms? So how many of you are doing that? Great. And how many people do you have to do that? Do you have enough to go to like several sessions at once? How many people do you get? One? Five. Wow. 3, okay. All right. And you're 1 also.
Well, they drop off the camera and leave.
Oh, okay. So then you end up with, you have 0. They drop off the camera, and then your own people have to shoot the video.
They push record.
Oh. Gotcha. How do you get the video back?
They retrieve the camera.
And then how long, is there a turnaround time?
Yeah. Slow. 48 hours.
48 hours, okay. One of the things that I mentioned about doing this with a webcam is that you can get the video is basically instant. You have it on the hard drive. As soon as you hit stop, you're done. You don't have to go through this whole process where especially those of you who are still using VHS, you don't have to go through this whole process where you kind of, I work at the Berkman. I should actually, wait, you know what? I should just back up and introduce myself, because I started this without even doing that. My name is Gene Koo. And in addition to working with CALI, I'm also a fellow at the Berkman Center for Internet Society at Harvard. And before that, I'd spent 5 years working in legal aid, primarily developing skills and skills training programs, largely a combination of in-person and over distance. So this is something I'm pretty familiar with from the perspective of developing simulations for practice skills and also values, because that was very important in the legal aid context. Deploying them and then figuring out how the heck are we going to review all this stuff. So this is a technology that we did not have at the time, and considering that we were doing distance skills education where people from California were enrolling in our courses, this would have been awesome to have had. So in Berkman, we often have these luncheons where people come and give talks, and what's terribly frustrating about it is that we record it with like HD cameras for archival purposes, and then it takes us about a week to compress those and put them online. So you can watch it live instantly, but if you miss it, you have to wait a week, which kind of makes no sense, but that's kind of the problem with having all this compression and all that kind of stuff, is it just takes human labor to go and compress all of it, and it takes a long time before you get it back. So one of the interesting side effects of using a webcam is you get it instantly. And moreover, you get it instantly, and it's low quality, which actually turns out to be useful, because it's not a huge multi-gigabyte file that won't fit on a standard kind of device to transfer files back and forth. It doesn't take you 3 hours to upload to a server. It's already compressed. It's already small. It's easy to use. Okay, so that was all actually that was all just filler, so I can now stop recording. And we can go back to the kind of having a conversation. You know what? Actually, let's not go back. Let's just have that conversation now. I'm curious how many of you have any thoughts about kind of webcams and cameras in as a practical matter in the classroom right now for you? Do you have any kind of concerns or solutions that you would offer at this point, besides Larry's awesome Omni tool? Yeah.
Your recording is in low light up there. Generally, the videos we get are, because they're not low light, of better quality.
Right.
With the same camera.
Right, right. So this is, I'm standing in shadow, and there's all sorts of reasons why that was. I was also standing a weird distance, and it's a weird angle, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, definitely.
We had one over in one room where the sun was shining through the window, and it almost melted the webcam, I think, but it just totally cut out after about 10 minutes. So heat, I don't know if the heat and the sunlight, but it reacted quite badly.
Yeah, so light is difficult. Like the best light usually is filtered cloud kind of light, not fluorescent, and definitely not direct sunlight. So how many of you have dedicated like rooms for video recording? Great. At Harvard, we had set aside a room in our new building for that, and of course, it was eventually allocated to a faculty person and taken away from. But that's how it goes. But it can be really helpful to have that, but then you have a problem of how many people can you do at once. In many ways, one of the most important things to pay attention to when you're doing recording is not so much the video. The video is nice to have, and like I said, but in some ways you don't have to have super quality on that. What you really need is audio. You really need to be able to hear what people are saying. And so one of the solutions when you have, if you had multiple people in the same room at the same time doing these exercises, one of the solutions that Larry had come up with is the idea of doing having a microphone going all the way up to the participant's mouth, because otherwise it can be really difficult to pick up the sound. If I'm doing a simulation right here and there's another group right here doing a simulation, you're talking about a lot of noise in the room. So the other benefit of having a computer like this is you can plug a microphone in pretty easily. If you want that kind of functionality on a digital video camera, the cheapest, I think, I just looked last week, the cheapest you can find for a digital video camera that allows sound input is somewhere around $400 or $500. And then you have the problem of having it on a digital video tape that you have to then go and transcribe onto a computer, and then you have that whole delay thing. So as much as there might be some problems with doing this on a decentralized way, at the moment, I actually really do personally think that webcams have a lot of advantages that are great unless you're fully staffed to bring in like a camera and be able to instantly transcribe that and give it back to the students. There's kind of a lot of advantages to webcams. I mean, at the last session, people also brought up some of the disadvantages. You run your software, and all of a sudden some pop-up comes up that says it's time to update your software, and the next thing you know, your video has been cut off. One solution for that might be to invest in the laptops as well and control the entire laptop environment so that that doesn't happen. When you have students running their own laptops and then you plug in the webcams in there, the next thing you know, they're downloading all sorts of software that destroys their codecs or whatever, and then it's not working anymore. So one possibility, and now you're talking about a pretty big investment back up to the same level as having a camera, is to own your own laptops that also are part of the recording studio. Again, the advantage there over having the camera is the time you save in the transcription. Anyway, so we can come back to that. I'd love to just have that conversation, because it seems to be whenever I talk to people about doing video recorded skills, performance, the big problem is usually at the level of recording the video in the first place. So that seems to be the recurring issue, and that's before we even get to MediaNotes. As you notice, we haven't even talked about MediaNotes yet. We've just talked about recording the video. So let's talk about MediaNotes. What you're looking at here is basically when you start up MediaNotes, you get this screen here where it asks you, do you want to open up an existing project or do you want to create a new one? Maybe I'm going to jump into an existing project first so that you can see what that looks like, and then I'll show you how easy it is to create a new one. And this is a live exercise from Larry's class that I visited this fall. I think you gave this to me from a previous session from the interviewing and counseling class. And this is, I would say, this is one of Larry's star students from the fall, I think. Let me just hit pause before this starts. Oh, it's not even starting. Okay, good. It's going to take a little time to load, I think. And why don't I just kind of point out the layout of this environment. For those of you who are familiar with MediaNotes, just bear with me as I kind of just jump through the basics. What you're seeing here is kind of three major areas of workspace. The upper left is the actual video itself, where you can watch the video happening and kind of control the playback of the video. You'll see the playing and the rewind, and right here you've got play and rewind and stop. And right above that is the timeline, which any of you who have done any video editing might be familiar with. You have the timeline that keeps running forward, and then you'll notice that there's these blocks here called events that show you this is the point where there's something interesting. So that's basically where you have the red pen come in and say, well, right around here, a circle. Right? So that's event number one. That's the first thing that's interesting here in this session. Now on the right is that same timeline turned around, so it's just listed in order. And you'll notice that it has some of the details of each event. It's got the name of the event, it's got some, like basically the first line of the comments, and then it's got the tags, and we'll come back to the tags in a bit. And those are the colored boxes. In the bottom left, this is the zoom in on the event that's highlighted. So you'll notice that the comment there is the exact same as the comment here, except over here you can only see one line. Down here you can see the whole thing. So this is kind of like the zooming in on the event so that you can see all the details. Here you're just kind of getting the top level view of the event. So again, you've got the video and the timeline underneath it. You've got the timeline flattened out on the right, and then you've got the comments. Now, one of the neat things about MediaNotes is how, there we go. Okay, let me jump over to something where you'll be able to see this. If you've ever done this manually, you kind of get a sense of how this would work. You would watch the video and you'd have a piece of paper and you write down, oh, at 3 minutes and 33 seconds, something really interesting happens, and it stops somewhere around 4 minutes, right? And then you kind of have to note the time every single time something interesting happens. If you wanted to jump to that point, you've got to move the point on the playhead until you find that point. Well, one of the great things that MediaNotes does is it synchronizes that timeline with the annotations so that it'll automatically jump you to the right point. And you'll see that right here. I've moved the timeline up to event 8, 7, 6, 5. I moved it up to event 5. And you notice as I hit play, I want you to watch right around where the mouse is, and you'll notice that we're going to jump through the events, and you'll see on the right that'll change, and you'll see on the bottom left that'll change as the events roll forward. So we're going to start from right before one of these, and you'll notice as we move through this set of events from 5 all the way through 8, you'll see it progressing.
That's a lot of money.
Right.
$15,000 a year or something. So.
Right. And it's frustrating to have this guy sitting there thinking that he owns the place, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I want to do this, nice and easy, so
Right.
that the other tenants don't think I'm a jerk for evicting their friend Larry.
Right.
So we've just jumped to event 6?
If they only knew, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy.
Event 7?
Okay. Well, I appreciate you sharing that with me. Anything else as far as facts go that you think are necessary for me to know?
No, I think that's probably it.
Okay.
Great. So,
Well, one of the first things I like to do when I meet...
So that you can kind of see already, that makes it, as you watch the video, you can already see it. It's almost like closed captioning, right? You're watching it move forward, and you can kind of see what the comments have been just by watching the video and looking at the comments over on the right, and then in detail all the way down here. You can also very conveniently just jump to the event that you want to jump to by clicking on it. So if I want to go back to event 6, I don't have to dial it manually back to the point where event 6 starts. I just click on it, and then bam, I've just jumped back to event 6, and I can hit play, and here's event 6.
Right. If they only knew, right?
Yeah.
Great. So So that kind of just shows you how, the power of this in terms of being able to line up the comments with the video. You'll also notice, let me jump to one where we get a little bit of Larry here. You'll also notice that under the comments, there's two different sets right here, and I don't know if you can read it because the text is a little bit fuzzy here. But the student, TBS, is commenting, asked him anything else and reminded him what the topic was. That's in red. I don't know if you can see that. And then underneath, Larry jumps in and says, again, nicely done. And you can see that that's called out because one of them has TBS and the other says LCF. So this allows you to kind of have multiple comments back and forth between people. So when you think about how would reviewing happen, you might, for example, have the student review him or herself first, and then the instructors jump in and kind of provide feedback on their evaluation. We could talk a little bit about different configurations for workflow. People always ask, well, does the student have to evaluate himself first? No, of course not. But this is the way this particular exercise was done, is the student did the first cut, and then Larry came in with kind of feedback on the self-evaluation. What you're also seeing here, in addition to the comments, and this is basically free text. You can write whatever you want. You can write as much as you want. You can write nothing. You'll also notice these little color squares, and those are tags. And the tags are really important in terms of helping to focus students on the learning objectives of the particular skill you're trying to teach. So if you have a framework, if you have a way of thinking about interviewing and counseling, for example, it can be really helpful to give the students this set of tags so that they can recognize and have a word, a common word, and apply that framework to their own practice. It helps them really fit their own practice in with a way to think about that practice as a way to compare what they're doing to the framework that you're providing. Not all of us may have a framework, so this is something that you might want to think about, but what you're seeing here, for example, on event 6, you're seeing one of them is, one of the tags there in blue is open question, so that would be an open-ended question in which you're kind of just fishing. And by comparison, let's see if I can find a closed question. Right here, you see also in blue is a closed question. So I'm going to trivialize this for a second, just to make it easier to think about. Imagine that you're trying to teach kind of a T funnel where you're moving from open-ended questions to eventually yes or no questions. And let's just say your students are actually having a hard time distinguishing between an open and closed question. Well, this would be a good way for them to kind of begin to see the difference, and for you to check up on whether they're understanding the difference. They can tag a set of questions as being open or closed, and you can kind of just quickly review and see that they're getting it right. Are they actually applying the open question tag to questions that are open? Although it's actually not as trivial as it sounds, because I remember in legal aid we were always people would always disguise their closed questions as open questions, and so you'd listen to it carefully, and after a while you're like, no, that's not actually that's not an open question. You're kind of giving them the answer. So this can be really helpful in terms of helping the students kind of use that framework and saying, okay, in this particular case, I'm trying to look at the difference between an open and closed question. I want to make sure that I'm applying that properly to my own practice. In negotiations, you might use the 7 elements if you're using that particular, if you're using the getting the yes model. If you have a framework, that can be really helpful. One thing that I don't know if Larry, you've experimented with this. One thing that I think some folks have experimented with when we tried it with some business students was making up your own tags, like having the students kind of make up their own tags. I don't know if you've had any success with that. We didn't, but did that prove useful?
Well, the capacity is in there. We just haven't. Yeah. We give them all the tags so far.
Yeah. So what happened was we thought it would be really neat if they came up with their own tags to see if they were kind of constructing their own model for how to understand their own practice. It turns out that's actually a really, really high order skill, which involves really deep knowledge of the practice. So it was interesting because they would create tags that were kind of unique tags for each one, which meant that they were basically just annotating but using the tag function. The point of the tags is to provide kind of a framework within which you can kind of understand, as you can see with the example of a summary or a closed question or a transition. These are concepts that you then show that you can recognize within your own practice. That then allows the students to reflect on, is this, for example, a good example of open and closed question. Another thing that you can do is you don't have to have this be a video of practice. You can have, your favorite video that everybody always uses, my cousin Vinny, and you can just basically find a way to put that in here. I'm not going to give you suggestions on how, because that might be illegal under certain jurisdictions. But in any event, you can imagine putting videos not of their own practice, but of some other practice or some other example, and say, okay, take this video and mark it up with this. You can have an argument from a TV show and say, put this in the negotiations framework. What's going on here? Identify where they're saying this is a position versus this is an interest, right? So you can do that. You don't have to have this be an exercise about their own practice. It might be a great way for them to begin to recognize what's going on in other people's activities. So just realize that this is a tool, and it's a powerful tool that you can use with anything. You don't have to use it with any given context. You don't have to use it with the student's own performance. You can have it in lots of other contexts. You can have the review done in all sorts of ways. We can talk about that in a bit. Any questions so far about what you're seeing here?
Gene, is it possible to get the tags to kind of resolve themselves into some kind of a graphical representation of what's actually going on in the interview? A bit like a cloud or something.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, let me show you some of the reviewing tools that's in here, because I think one of the critical things when Larry and company designed this system was not only to make the annotation process easier, but from a perspective of self-interest, to make reviewing a lot easier. So obviously one thing that makes reviewing a lot easier is that you can just jump from event to event and kind of skip all the boring stuff, right? So that can help. What you also see up here is the ability to filter the events. So you can basically say, you know what, I only want to see, and this doesn't exactly address your question, but it's close. I only want to see open questions. And so I pulled down that menu and I've just selected open question, and now what you're looking at is these are only events that have open questions. So you see we jump from event 1 to event 6 because events 2 through 5 did not have an open question in them.
As identified by the student.
As identified by whoever is doing the reviewing.
Oh, by the reviewer.
Yeah. And again, it doesn't have to be the student. So we can talk about like different ways you might configure the workflow, but whoever has done the reviewing, you can do this. And so for example, let's go back to the possibility your students are having a hard time distinguishing open and closed. Well, you can filter only the open questions, and you can just do a spot check. Go through every other one. Are they basically hitting it, or they're kind of tagging ones that are borderline open, borderline closed, and they're not really getting the picture here. So that it can at least help you spot false positives. Obviously, it's not going to help you spot false negatives because they've not been properly tagged. But it does give you some shortcut into that process, and it does give you a sense of, are they even using this tag? Did they do any open questions? If you pulled that down and you suddenly got no results, well then there's some problem with if that's something that they were supposed to do in this exercise, either they failed to tag it or they're not doing it. So that also gives you some insight. So it doesn't exactly answer your question, Paul, but you can do this kind of filtering thing. It would be neat to have a cloud. I don't know if that's in the works there, Larry.
But just the tag now will count up how many of each.
Oh yes, right. So this is the tag palette. You can think of it as a paint palette, and you'll notice that there's a count. There's 8 empathetic. This is actually, I have to say about your student, he is incredibly empathetic, and so he was a social worker. He was a social worker before. And if you read the comments, he's also kind of very self-critical. So you'll notice there's 8 empathetic statements here, 7 summaries. So you can kind of get a quick count of how many tags are in here. So yeah, so this is the reviewing. You can also review by who's making the reviews. So I only want to see. Let me go back to clearing this. I only want to see. Let's say the workflow was I comment on my own video, and then I give it to the instructor. The instructor puts some comments in and then gives it back to me. Well, I probably should watch the whole video again, but come on. You know, I mean, so what I probably would want to do is take a look at where did Larry make any comments about my work, and so I pull down the comment filter and I say, just show me the ones where he had something to say, and then I'll just kind of spot check his feedback. So that'll take me from event 1 to event 3. So you know that could also help to kind of move along the process, and so you don't have to each time you review the video watch yet another half hour of the same thing. But it'll help you kind of zoom in on and so a lot of this is kind of designed to be time savers for both the student and for you, because we know that it's very important to get all this practice in, but practice is time consuming, and if you're going to review everything 3 times, that means a half-hour exercise becomes a 90-minute exercise pretty quickly without even considering the logistics of it. Any other questions or observations? Yes?
Do we have multiple reviews?
Yes. It's kind of a question of workflow as to whether you have to kind of do it serial, or else you're going to kind of fork and you're going to have 2 different reviews of the same. It's kind of like Word, right? I mean, if you send it off to different people, you're going to have to find a way to, although there is a merge function. I don't think we have a merge function here, right? Is there a merge function?
You can import events from other, but if it's the same event, same video, it's going to overwrite.
Yeah, so it can get really messy. So you probably want to do it sequentially. So I comment on my own video, I give it to my partner partner comments on it, and then we give it to the instructor, who then also does some comments. That's probably the best way to you kind of daisy chain it all along. And you know, there's different ways to manage that, some of which Larry kind of talked about in the last session. So I'm going to just create a brand new project and take that video that we totally invented about half an hour ago. So I am going to create a new session. I'm going to save it on my desktop. I'm going to call it the CALI. And so this is, as you can see, it's completely blank. And so I'm going to click the screen to add media as it suggests. And here's the video I just shot.
Did that get automatically saved when you stopped? Or did you just find it?
It did get automatically saved. I'm doing some magic here to make it look easy. But it was saved in my videos file, so it was fairly easy to find. And let's hope that this is hit record, and here I am recording myself talking to all of you. Okay. I mean, this is not all that exciting. You've seen this before. You know how webcams work. So now what I can do is I can just immediately start commenting. I don't need tags. Tags are nice, but let's say we're in uncharted territory. We've never even thought about how to grade a presentation at a conference. So we don't have any tags to use. What I would do is basically so let's just create a little annotation event right now. I'm going to hit this plus sign. That will just insert an event, a little tiny baby event you can see right there. And I can change where it begins and ends, but just by kind of dragging the beginning and end points. And so if you're really, really anal, you can get it exactly precisely right, but that's probably not necessary. And so here's that little annotate here. And okay, so I want to grab the I hate the I want to really zoom in on the I think this should do it. And yeah, right. So that's this kind of verbal tick right there. Okay. Actually, I keep forgetting to register myself, so I'm anonymous for now. But there you go. I just typed in the comment. You said how embarrassing. I can be over here, and then if I click on that event, I'm going right back to Can't change that fact that I said right there. So that just shows you how easy it is to create this project, put a tag on it, put a comment on it, and there you go. And now you're ready to give it back to me and make me look at this over and over again. So, now, what I could do is I can go and create an tag, right? And I because ums are bad, I want it to be red for like, kind of the red marker. So here I am, I said and what do? I take that tag and I drag it onto this event, and there you go. I said haha. So that's it. I just went and created a tag and I applied it. Now, if you do in fact have a framework, you can go and import the tag. And so let's import the PPI evaluation. What does PPI stand for again?
Preliminary problem identification. It's from Binder's model.
Right. And this is actually not a substantive set of tags. This is an evaluative set of tags. It's basically good, bad, indifferent, right? So, or actually it's good. Is this an effective performance? Does this require improvement? And so I want to tag this as this requires improvement. I think I can do better. So throw that on, and now I've got these two different tags. And you just saw that I just imported an entire tag set. So if you're teaching negotiations and you decided you're going to use the 7 elements and you want that to be the tag set, you can create that, give it to your students, and then they just import that into the project, and there you go. You've got your tags that they would use, and they would say, okay, here's a interest, or here is a relationship that's being illustrated in this particular exchange. So it's saved, and what I can now do is, of course, I can save it and I can hand it off to the next person. What can be really helpful, though, because actually what MediaNotes produces is a project file that doesn't include the video, which allows you to kind of disconnect it from the video, because the video can be, how big is this video? This video is, where did I put it? This video is 21 megabytes, which is actually not all that big. It's almost small enough to email. But that's still pretty big. So you can kind of put the video in one location and only exchange the MediaNotes file, which is basically a collection of all the tags and annotations, and then you don't have to keep sending the video back and forth. Or what you can do is wrap this whole project up. So that's package this project and video, kind of bundle it all into one package, and then save it. I don't know how long this takes. Oh, there we go. And that is a 21 point. Okay, so it's only barely larger than the video file we started with. Now the nice thing about that file, I'm going to close MediaNotes right now, is I can open it, and it's going to kind of unbundle itself and ask you, where should I save myself, because now I need to be saved somewhere. So I will save it back to the desktop and call it let's just replace it. Okay, they've detected that it was already there, and so I've just opened it up again, and it has the video and all the tags and all the comments already in there. So in some ways that's kind of the easiest way to kind of bundle everything into one package and pass it on to the next person, where they don't have to keep kind of matching things, because you can, next thing you know, you attach the wrong video to that file, and the annotations obviously make no sense. So how do you get the files back and forth? That's a major issue. What I've been generally recommending, unless you have a fairly robust infrastructure the way Larry was describing in the last session, where you have an entire kind of file management system available and maybe some workflow on top of that, and CALI is going to provide that, where you can upload the video, and we'll have a workflow so that the video kind of goes to the next person in the chain, and you can kind of set up these chains. In many ways, if you're doing this in the classroom, probably one of the easiest things to do, especially if you're only going to test this and you don't want to set up a huge infrastructure, is just to buy a handful of the USB keys. which nowadays you can, I mean, how much is 2 gigabytes nowadays? It's like $10, or maybe not quite that cheap, but it's pretty cheap. And in some ways, it's the, you know, I've just recorded it, it's sitting on my hard drive, I can just put in the USB key, transfer the USB key, take the key out, give it to the next person who, you know, let's say my partner reviews me. So I just give it to her, and she puts it into her computer, unpackages the thing, does the work, packages it back up and saves it back to the USB key and hands it off to the instructor, let's say. That obviously requires a physical handoff, and that can be a pain. But if you're already in the same room, it may not be that much more work. And it doesn't require you to set up kind of an entire infrastructure for uploading and downloading. I know that when we tried this with some executive ed students in was it Babson Business School this past semester, a lot of them were doing that from home. And as some of you may know, if you have home broadband, upload speeds are much slower than download speeds. And so these folks were finding that they were uploading this, you know, kind of 50 megabyte, or actually it was much larger than that. It was maybe like, you know, basically 200 megabyte files. And, you know, they kind of start uploading and would walk away and come back in an hour and it's still uploading, because sometimes, you know, especially depending what time of the day it is, it can be really asymmetrical in terms of the download versus upload speeds. If you're doing it all from within your law school intranet, I don't know how long it would take. I don't know how much you can, if everybody started uploading it all at the same time at the end of class, and you have like only one wireless router, I don't know how quickly you would flood that router. So these are some of the issues that would come with kind of trying to set up an internet solution. That said, CALI is going to create a workflow management system, and the advantage of that, of course, is that you can set up the chain. You can have it be kind of automated so that when the student uploads the video, we can kind of detect that and then push that on to, you obviously have to tell it, well, who should review this, right? But, you know, what we want to be able to do is to set it up so that it'll notify the next person, hey, this video is available for you to review, and then so on and so forth. So we'll be building that out over the course of the next few months, and we'll let you know about how that's progressing. But in the meantime, you certainly try whatever works for you, and again, we'd be happy to have that conversation right now. What I've been generally recommending, because it's easiest to think about, is the USB keys, just because it kind of has a nice mapping onto physical space that we can at least understand. You know, you lose the key, you lose the video, as opposed to it's lost in cyberspace and nobody knows what that means. So I think I'll just stop there and just see if there's anything that you want to discuss or ask questions about, or shoot some problems and solutions back and forth in terms of how this might work. Do any of you foresee using this in the fall with any of your schools? Can just get a show of hands? Great. Okay. How about at least within the next year, by spring? Yeah. So what are the main obstacles you're foreseeing right now in trying to make this happen at your school?
Training the faculty.
Okay, training the faculty. Did all of you, or at least most of you, get Larry's rough draft of the instructor's guide to using MediaNotes? If not, we're going to be making it available, of course, from the CALI website. We have available from our website. You can download. Actually, you know what? So let me just talk about the actual getting MediaNotes. You can get MediaNotes from the CALI website. If you're logged in, you can just click on the logged in with a CALI account. You can click on the Get MediaNotes and download MediaNotes. If you are an instructor, a professor, staff, librarian, it's free. You get it for free. You can install it on your shared computers for free, thanks to the generosity of BYU Law School. And right now, the pricing for it is only for students, and it's $20 per student. What we found is with the schools we're working with, for the most part, the schools just pay the $20 themselves, and it's just much easier than having the students pay on their own individually. We're looking at revisiting that, and if we do, it's likely to mean the price is going down, not up, at least for the foreseeable future. So that's hopefully good news. Yeah?
Gene, UK law schools?
Uh-huh. Members. Are they members? Join CALI.
Join CALI?
Yeah.
Is that the solution?
Yes, we've been finding that MediaNotes has been the biggest driver of CALI membership expansion over the last year. I think we've even gotten a few business schools to join. So, yeah. Yes?
I've seen a deposition software for lawyers that looks somewhat like MediaNotes, only it also has a transcript of what's being said as a window. The way I would use this would be a slightly different than Larry's class. I teach a legal ethics course where there are 2 simulations done in class, and then perhaps 16 students have to write graded papers analyzing and comparing those 2 simulations, and things like how accurate was the explanation of confidentiality.
Right.
So it's pretty important to be able to actually, what they actually do now is they watch and do their own, laborious transcription of what was said from minute 3 to minute 3:25. So I understand that what our webmaster says, there's a service where you can send an MP3 to somebody and they'll transcribe it at $1.20 a minute or something like that. $2 a minute.
Okay.
So how easy would it be to add a transcript window to MediaNotes?
Larry?
I actually, sort of a kludge, but I do that now. I'll take an example video of a lawyer with a estate planning client. We'll have the secretary transcribe it. Just create events for everything the lawyer said, everything the client said, and you just paste in the transcriptions there, and then you have, every time somebody speaks, you have an event that's labeled, it's tagged, and it adds annotation to it as well.
Okay.
And it comes up in the standard event window.
Can I ask a follow-up on that? If I have in one of my simulations actual stenographers who give us real-time transcripts with ASCII discs, could we take that?
Any digital.
We could put that right on here.
Yeah. If you could bring that back up, I'll show. There's one other little feature they might want to know about.
Sure.
You need the one that you had before, though, in response to this question. Down in the lower left-hand corner of that list is a details checkbox, way down at the bottom.
This one? No?
No.
Nope, there.
Yeah. If you click that, the full annotation shows up in this window, so that you can just scroll through.
You can just scroll through and put the.
As it jumps forward, you're jumping through the transcript
Right.
while the video plays.
And then you would just add with the initials in front of it the comments to that chunk of transcript.
Yeah, that's how I've done it with the estate planning and some other illustrative videos.
So you would just start with the transcript, load it up, and then cut it in anytime you wanted to.
You can, yeah.
Create an event.
Or I keep the transcript in a Word document right next to it, and I'm just cutting and pasting out of the Word document as I create events.
It'd be interesting to see if there's a way to kind of take the transcripts and almost automatically dump it into, if you can do 30-second chunks or whatever. Just a thought. Yeah.
We're using a streaming server to record our exercises to at this point. Is there a way to point MediaNotes to media that is not saved locally, but that's being streamed?
That would be our next iteration. Is going to be a web.
Built into MediaNotes is just CALI. All they have to do is create a space where you can put that.
Yeah, the media does have to be local, though, right? It has to reside on your hard drive. You can't point it at a flash video.
I think currently it has to be local, but it's just a switch that they could set to pull it off the internet.
Right. So you have to kind of download it. But I do think that we're going to have to look at web-based videos, with where we're heading. Basically,
the distribution is sweet. You record.
Yeah,
to it,
the issue
becomes
becomes privacy and security,
Yep.
right? As soon as you cross that line, I mean, maybe students don't care, but I think they do, even in the era of YouTube.
But potentially, you're controlling that at the streaming server, not via MediaNotes anyway. So.
Right. But it does, yeah. So we have to. There's a whole kind of ecology that we have to address around. How do you create a streaming server where you get the right permissions and all that kind of stuff? Especially because you're going to want the reviewer to be someone else, and so you start having to create all these permissions. But yeah, that I think is going to have to be the next iteration. How do we do a web-based version of this, so that we don't?
You got to be the site.
Yep. Okay. Yes.
You said it's free for the faculty
Correct.
computers and $20 per
Student.
Okay.
It's basically all but students are free. Students are $20, and we're revisiting that pricing right now, probably pushing it down.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
What specific file types do you?
I think we've tested it with a number of files. I mean, Windows Media works.
Anything that plays
QuickTime works.
in QuickTime or Media Player.
The issue that arises is whether, if you record in some funky codec, whether the person who's reviewing is also going to have that codec. So in general, I would stick with pretty I would stick with the standard types. It doesn't work with Flash.
Right. Okay.
So FLVs don't work.
Right.
I tend to prefer if I can get that option, and unfortunately this webcam does not give me that option. I tend to prefer QuickTime, both because I think Apple pretty much can play WMVs, Windows Media Video, but I like QuickTime partly because Microsoft has all this kind of hardware garbage that kind of prevents piracy, which then also gets in the way of properly playing Windows Media. So they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot with that. I tend to prefer QuickTime for that reason of both being able to use across different computers. Not that that's been an issue really, and also just because I don't like the way Microsoft does video. But that might be political. Yeah.
So it uses both players in Windows and in Windows? You're saying it uses both QuickTime and...
It can't. Yeah. It basically it embeds the player in here, so you can. Right now we're using a WMV, but I have an MOV version of this as well.
Because on the Mac version, it probably only uses QuickTime Player.
I think it uses whatever the Mac is capable of playing.
Right.
Yeah. So if your Mac is capable of playing WMVs, and at this point I think they all are, you should be fine. Yeah. I mean, one thing I'm trying to figure out is right now this webcam only records in WMV, so I'm trying to figure out how to get it to record in QuickTime. I think I have to get different software for it. Yeah.
Going back to the way I would use it, I assume that it would not be a problem to have, here's whatever video it is, and have 20 different sets of annotations of the same video, say that each student would do a separate one. Would that be possible?
Yeah, I think what you
that's the way my assignments would be.
So say more about how that works and why is there only one video? Is it because it's kind of the exemplar and
right? It's I have 48 students and I don't have 48 students all do exercises, and I'm not grading their performance. I'm grading their analysis of what happens.
Right.
And so there's a 20-minute demonstration, and out of the group of 16 students that have to get ready for the assignment, or however many they are, only 2 of them actually do it.
Right.
But everybody has to analyze what happens.
That's great.
And so right now what it is that I have a streaming video of that performance on the website, and then they have to write a paper, a 5 to 7 page paper, and they in effect footnote to the video. So they say, okay, from 3 to 3:15, when they explained the exception for confidentiality, they forgot to mention that, or they overstated the following.
Right. So with 20
so
people,
all the same thing.
Right. With 20 people, it probably then makes more sense for each of them to have their own annotation set, and then for them to send to you just the annotations and not the video, and you just match up the annotation yourself to the video. Yeah. If it was fewer, then you might imagine them all passing it around and getting to see each other's annotations. But at 20, you're talking about way. Yeah. Yeah. I should also mention pedagogically. One of the things that the negotiation folks at Harvard have been experimenting with is Larry described in the last session, deliberate practice. They were kind of a little bit more focused on what they were calling reflective practice, which is kind of what you're describing, and it's kind of very similar, but a different emphasis on more on kind of thinking about what you're doing and constructing your own view on it. So there's no specific way that you have to use MediaNotes, right? So as I said before, you can set up your own workflow. It can be that you record the video and you immediately give it to your partner to review, and then they give it back to you and you just look at their comments. It could be that you review yourself, give it to the instructor, and then the instructor gives you feedback. There's no particular way that you have to use MediaNotes. It's a tool that's open for you to kind of think about what works in your context and for the way that you teach, and then fit that in with the way that you teach. I will say that one of the kind of obstacles I've been encountering and trying to talk to people about using MediaNotes is a lot of people don't spend this kind of time. And so one of the things that's possible is that this is going to be a big expenditure of time that people aren't normally doing. Like, in other words, you might be recording it, but you just watch it and you kind of talk about it as you're watching it. End of story. That means you maybe spend half an hour on the exercise, half an hour in a review. That's it. This is going to change that. And so I think that's one of the things to watch out for is where is that time going to come from, who's going to make the commitment, and what might that mean in terms of how much time you spend on exercises. I think that's, for the folks that I've been talking to, been one of the bigger challenges.
I just wanted to add something I just tried, which I find pretty neat for those who asked about streaming video. So we do a lot of MP4 streaming videos online. I just downloaded the MediaNotes for Apple, and then I created a reference movie that pointed back to my streaming system.
Wow.
And guess what?
It works?
In MediaNotes.
Wow. You'll have to share with us how that works. That's awesome. We have on the, we're going to have a new, we're going to have on our, this is the, if any of you have gone to the, we're eventually going to relaunch, we're about to redo the entire CALI website. And it's going to enable us to provide folks with the ability to create groups and kind of share almost like listservs. And so there is going to be a main site for MediaNotes users. There's also going to be a main site for interviewing and counseling. And on this site, we do have, if I can find it, this is why we're, of course, redesigning everything, a community space where you can share tips with each other. And I'd love for you to be able to post how to do streaming, a pointer to a streaming video within MediaNotes and make it work. So that would be awesome. It's not coming up for some reason. But if you basically start from the main CALI site and click on the MediaNotes link, it'll take you to this page, and I'll clean this up so that you can find the community space more easily. There's a number of exercises that Larry has shared. If you teach interviewing and counseling, there's a whole pile of exercises. We have to kind of revise them, but in any event, there's a whole pile of exercises that you can kind of start with. We're also sharing all of the tags and that Larry has created in the context of interviewing and counseling. I've been trying to work with the negotiations folks at Program and Negotiations at Harvard to create negotiations tags as well. Any of you who come up with your own frameworks, by all means, please share them, because this is where the kind of the exciting part of the learning happens is for almost for you as the instructors and theoreticians to kind of think more about what is it that makes this particular practice successful or unsuccessful, and to kind of lay that out in a way that you can start explaining to students and begin to recognize in their own practice. If we can share that with each other, we're going to be able to build on each other's knowledge and really be able to advance both our own understanding of the skill as well as the students. So that's one of the most exciting things I think coming out of this is we can take Larry's tags and look at them and learn from that about how to think about interviewing and counseling and then build off of that.
One comment on the instructor's manual that was passed around. Eventually we need to turn that into some sort of collaborative document. It just has a lot of ideas about how you might use this, but it's apparent already that there are a lot of ideas that we haven't thought of. And we can put it in a wiki.
I'm absolutely planning on dumping it into a wiki and having, there's already a wiki which oh, look at that, now it's working. Except I can't find it. But there already is a wiki of kind of best practices that I've been laying out in terms of both technology ideas as well as kind of different teaching approaches, and I'll just take that whole thing and put it in the wiki. That's great, thank you. Just out of curiosity, have any of you played with this? Because I thought I was going to buy it, but I didn't. So, this is the $100 video recorder. Any good? Yeah.
There's no zoom on it though, right?
But you just put it in the right place. I mean, the nice thing about the flip video is it's literally just like one button. You hit record and you hit stop, and so there's not going to be any pop-ups that are going to interfere with the video. It's idiot-proof. You basically hit record, you hit stop. The only reason why I didn't experiment more with it is that the audio quality can be shaky, and so if you're in a crowded room with lots of people, that's not going to work. But if you get your own room, or you can go and find some quiet corner, this is about as simple and also cheap. This is about the same price as a webcam. It's about $150, and it's already got built into it a USB storage, so you just plug it into your computer. I think the software is already, am I right? The software is already built into it to convert and compress down to the size that you're talking about. So Should have bought one of these, but I didn't. But something to look into. Super cheap video recording. It's the kind of thing that your students can put in their pocket and walk off with, but it could be a heck of a lot easier than using this if sound is not an issue. Again, the sound is the biggest issue, and if your sound is a concern, then you're either going to have to run with something like this with a microphone input or the $300 to $400 camcorder with sound input, but then